now on to the venerable EX500 that's been around forever. Obviously this is one of those bikes, much like the SV650, that's an entry-level bike, and so you get entry-level components. We have absolutely no damping available on the front, and in older models there was no damping available in the shock either. However, on the newer models you do get preload adjustment in the shock, and that's it. So obviously this bike comes as fun factor and price point, so the suspension components are actually not that sophisticated at all. So the only thing you can do with these, fork oil and springs for the front, and go ahead and find an aftermarket shock for the rear.
Plaza Cycle. Walk in and ride out with the Kawasaki, Honda, or Yamaha of your dreams. Remember, Plaza Cycle. Walk in and ride out.
Okay, on you get 20. All right, so Dave's weight range, we know extended it was 20 inches to the decal. Well, what do you know? He's at an inch right now with the way in which the preload is set up on the shock, so it's actually pretty stiff. However, on a bike like this, and the same with the SV, you want to err on the stiff side a little bit because the shock will deteriorate in performance. It's maybe a little bit too stiff at an inch, so I'd back it off a little. So give him 1.25 inches, and then as the shock wears out, the sag will increase. Let's go to the front. And we're at 4.5 inches of travel here available. So we know that the front end is actually pretty stiff. So that is good news, because the front forks on these used to be extremely soft. As soon as you hit the brakes, they would just disappear underneath you. So braking was quite a, shall we say, colorful experience, as the front end would immediately disappear and you would have to fight for control. So upgraded substantially in the spring rate so that it can support someone very well, somewhere in the weight range of about 200, although the forks are a little bit too stiff for my liking for that particular weight. Okay, so with Hailey on the bike, we're significantly less sag in the bike, which is to be expected. If it was an inch for Dave at his weight and 40 pounds less, then we're considerably less. So again, we'd have to wonder if the spring was too stiff, even though we could adapt the preload to suit. The other thing about that on these particular shocks where there's no rebound damping is that we have no way of controlling the spring preload as it unloads over bumps. So if it gets softer, it gets mushy. So in this instance, it's so stiff, we would probably end up changing the spring. Now in the front, we know that the front's rigid, and with even less weight on the front, we can see she's almost at full travel, 4.75 inches. So again, with this particular front end, it's far too stiff. It would cause steering problems because the front doesn't work at all, and it would deflect the handlebars over bumps. So it'd be an incredibly miserable rough ride with these forks and these springs if you're in 130 to 150 pound range. Now with Chris on the bike at 240, we have 1.5 inches in the back, so it's perfect for the street. It obviously, again, because it's a gas oil shock, would need tightening up just a little bit, but it's actually, I think, pretty surprising. And somebody of his weight, this bike is set up for that particular demographic. Now again, because it's a standard motorcycle and all his weight is on the back of the bike, I don't expect the front forks to show much improvement. And indeed they don't, because the back end is sagging, so weight's moved away from the front end, and he's at almost 4.5 inches in the front. Now, when he's going to brake, obviously that's going to change because the weight of the motorcycle will come forward and his body weight will move forward with it. So sag will work pretty well in this, even though it appears to be very stiff in the front. It's all because his seating position is so far back and the back of the chassis is weighted, it's not weighted evenly front to back.